Roman or Grecian myth, doesn't it? Suddenly the God appeared on earth. For Jesus to be born a human, he has to have a human backstory. He has to have a family. He has to have ancestors. Other people have to figure in the story. And it is so important for Jesus to be a human because that's the way he can bridge. You know, a bridge that is 90% complete, I'm not driving over that bridge. A bridge has to touch both sides. So for Jesus to take our humanity to God in salvation, Jesus has to be God reaching into humanity, and humanity reaching to God. That way he is the bridge for us. Okay? So the backstory. And we could talk about prophets of the old. We could talk about all the way back to Abraham, all the way back to Adam. But this week and next week, we're going to take a look at crazy John. People do have to have a family and a lineage, so Jesus had to have one as well. When Jesus was about to begin his earthly ministry, he encountered again his cousin John the Baptist. Most scholars believe that baptism was not by immersion. You know, I'm tired of those who come to me and say, well, don't you know baptism is by immersion, and therefore if you've only had a little sprinkle, you've not been baptized. Well, besides being snide, it's factually incorrect. The word baptizing in Greek does not mean to put under the water. The word is commonly used for ships. And the only ships that go completely in the water are submarines, and I don't think they had them 2,000 years ago. It means to go into the water, to have water around you. And maybe it was poured on your head with a shell, maybe there were armfuls and so on, but it's not usually under the water. And when Jesus was about to begin his earthly ministry, there was John. But before that, when John and Jesus had just been conceived, well, guess what? Compare, contrast. Both Elizabeth and Mary were pregnant. And through recent discoveries, we've been able to actually see this. Both Mary and Elizabeth, who were probably first or second cousins, were pregnant. John the Baptist and Jesus, compare, contrast. There were angelic annunciations to both of them. We know about the angel Gabriel came to Mary. We're going to be saying that 2 or 3 times during Advent. But there was also this angelic annunciation to Zechariah, John's father, when he was in the temple burning incense. And once again, maybe you have, and I know I have been confronted by people saying, why do you use incense in church? Don't you know that incense is pagan? Last person that said to me that, I said, do you like pizza? Yeah! Do you know that murderers eat pizza too? Incense is right here. Incense is Old Testament worship. Incense is involved in the worship of heaven. So what I now want to say is, if you want to have biblical worship, if you want to have worship in heaven, where's your incense? There was also, of course, this annunciation to Mary. In both cases, John and Jesus, their conceptions were supernatural, but in different ways. Right? To Zechariah and Elizabeth, 2 old people. I don't know what old people is, except it's older than me. Older than you. They're over 90, Frank. That's old people. To Zechariah and Elizabeth, the amazing thing is two old people would conceive a child the normal way. There's something supernatural going on here. To Mary, the Holy Spirit would overshadow her. This is called the virgin conception, or sometimes the virgin birth. It is not the immaculate conception. That is, if it is true, which is doubtful, arguable, it's something else. This is the virginal conception. This means that Mary was pregnant not by Joseph or any other man, but in some supernatural way. The Holy Spirit came upon her so that God would become human. I've had people say, how can you believe that? I said, do you believe in God? Yeah. Well, what do you think God is? I shared before about this Church of England priest named J.B. Phillips, who wrote a book, Your God is Too Small. There are people who believe in God. He's 12 feet tall. He's bigger than me. He does stuff I cannot do. But he can't do this. That's not God. That might be a superhero, but it's not God. The Holy Spirit in some way would overshadow her, and she would be pregnant and give birth to Jesus. Because God can work supernaturally in many different ways. One of the wonderful things about the Holy Spirit renewal of the last 50, 60 years in the church is how people have come to believe that God can work supernaturally today. But one of the difficulties about that is they tend to narrow so that it isn't dramatic, it isn't of God. I wonder, are they God seekers or are they thrill seekers? For example, I'll try to use an example I haven't used it around here. That could be miraculous too. Somebody was out of there. Oh Lord, have somebody call me with a job offer. Silence. Well, God, I thought you could work today. She said, yeah, but don't tell God I was going to do his business. You might ask, but thy will be done, O Lord. And then later, family member came over, a nephew, and he was looking for the funnies in the daily newspaper, and happened to see an ad. Auntie, isn't this what you know how to do? And he pointed to an ad. She called and got a job. Coincidence, maybe, or maybe God at work, but God at work in a different way. So we've got to be careful that when we ask God to do something wonderful, something needed, we say, in your time and in your way. Otherwise, we may miss the visitation of God. In both cases, also, we see that their names are specially chosen by God. Remember, they were thinking, who should this child be called by? Oh, Zechariah, his father. There was a lot of that. Anybody see the movie, My Greek Wedding?
Exactly.
Yeah, where, well, what's his name? Nicholas. Well, which Nicholas? George's Nicholas or Nicholas's Nicholas? And you know, every Greek is named Nicholas or George. I understand that's not quite true, but it's almost true. And so in Judaism, there'd be a lot of naming after the father. So which Zechariah? Which well is it Zechariah?